Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Memphis Landmarks Commission for today, January 23rd, 2020, to order. And Happy New Year, everybody. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Ms. Boyd,
Present.
Ms. Doss,
Present.
Ms. England,
Present.
Vice Chair Tucker,
Here.
Mr. Warren, Chair Cox.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. The Landmarks Commission and the local historic district guidelines are established to ensure preservation of structures that are of historic value to the city of Memphis. Our function is to preserve significant resources, enhance community pride, foster civic beauty, and ensure compatibility within the locally designated historic districts. This commission is authorized to review projects and determine their appropriateness based on each district's historic review guidelines. Well, Mr. Secretary, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, they're not.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, will a member who has read the minutes from December 19th, 2019, make a motion for their approval?
A motion to approve.
And second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Secretary, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. England,
Yes.
Ms. Doss,
Yes.
Ms. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Warren,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tucker,
Yes.
Chair Cox.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, sir. Okay, all of the minor COAs have been approved per staff. Okay. So we can move on to the major COA. And we have none that have been held. And first on the agenda is G1, MLC 19-245, 621 South Willette Street, Central Gardens Historic District. Is the applicant present? Okay,
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chairman.
okay. Would you give us your name and address, please?
Yes, Brenda Salamito Baser, Salamito Land Planning, 1779 Kirby Parkway, Memphis.
Okay. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you. Don't leave. Have you had an opportunity to review staff's report?
Yes, ma'am, I have. Yes, ma'am, I have. The project architect, Mr. Peter Warren, and I, and the property owners are here. We agree with all the conditions.
Okay, great. Would anyone like to see the report?
I would. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Brian Barkers, the Office of Planning and Development Landmarks Section. As noted, this is for a retroactive COA for to modify an approved COA that was approved back last year to increase the gable dormer height to 32.5 feet with rectangular windows and install new horizontal siding 7 inches with 7-inch reveal. As you can see, the site plan and survey, the outbuilding is to the lower left southwest corner of this lot. This is a corner lot in Central Gardens at southwest corner of Harvard and South Willette Street. As you can see, in the southwest corner of this lot, there's a 15-foot wide public alley along the south property line. They have access from Willette to this to the outbuilding. The outbuilding includes an accessory, a garage and also accessory dwelling unit. This is a view of our inventory photos. As you can see, the upper left is the current house, a Greek Revival home, very nice home, 2-story with tiles, and also the accessory structure that was built in the early 1900s, I would imagine, to our records date to that time. It's a 2-story with a gable roof. It also is an accessory dwelling unit that was built. It never really coincided or was compatible to the historic Greek Revival home. It was totally, as you can see by the photo, it was a shed roof on the first floor with a garage on the first floor, as well as an accessory dwelling unit above. Next slide, please. This is a view of the current house. There was a major modification approved for the front of the home You can see the terrace above the front door that was changed from the original inventory photo. Lower right photo is our existing conditions of the accessory dwelling unit with the first floor garage. As you can see, the openings on the first floor for the garage doors, and also the second floor, the windows are in, as well as the 7-inch reveal hardy plank. Third story is that portion that is in question. This area was modified from the original COA to include a gable roof dormer, instead of the original, I believe it was a shed roof dormer. I can't remember, but it's in your packet. It's a major change, so therefore it's a major alteration. This view is directly from the front corner, which would be the southeast corner of their home. I'm standing at the corner of their home on the south side of the home towards the front. I'm looking to the west. This is what you would see. This is out near the terrace area in the rear yard, probably on the back porch, I believe. I see the pedestals there. Next slide, please. These are views from the south corner and Harvard Alley, which is the alley along the south property line. As you can see, the photo on the lower right and also the photo in the upper left, this is a view from the front of the house. I knew I had a photo of that. From the front of the house, and then you have a view from the alley. That's what you see, the frame construction. Next slide, please. These are other views. The lower left is from Harvard Avenue. You can see the new construction to the right of the main structure. You see the upper photo is a view from the left side of the yard, almost down the alley. You see the alley. Could you point to that alley? You see the alley that is to the left of that large tree, and then in that area. The other photo to the lower right is a view from Harvard Avenue. This is an entranceway, a pedestrian entranceway that leads to the backyard, to a garden area, and you can also see the accessory unit and the garage building from that street, from Harvard Avenue. Next slide, please. This is also a view from Harvard Avenue. These are current photos, and you see the accessory building being built in the rear yard. It's lower in height from this view. However, we believe it needs to be more compatible with the home. Keep in mind that the accessory structure was never compatible with the home. But since this has come back in, we've had a Board of Adjustment case on it. It resets everything for zoning ordinance per the zoning ordinance, and also for historic guidelines. Next slide. This is another view. It's a closer view from Harvard Avenue. This is the pedestrian entrance to the backyard. As you can see, this gives you an idea how it would look from that street side. The upper dormers is what's in question here, that area right in there. It's higher than the ridge line from the original structure, and higher than the ridge line of the current structure. Next slide. This is the east elevation. This is what you would see if you were standing on the rear porch. Well, you wouldn't see all the building, but you would see most of the building. It is you have 4 doors for garage, it's a 4-car garage. On the south end on the first floor, you have storage area. Above that, you have a terrace. Second floor is an accessory dwelling unit, as well as a third story. And then you have stairways. You can see the 5-panel wood doors. That will be a stairwell leading to the upper stores. Materials are hardy plank with surrounds in the windows, and also with corner boards, 4-inch corner boards. As you can see, this is a view from the alley. Second story would have a terrace, and then a deck area, outdoor deck, open deck, and then you see the shed roof. The original height line was 28 feet. The maximum height line is 20 feet per the zoning code. However, the original previous ridge line was 28 feet. It was already higher than the zoning code. The gable roof dormer is higher, is 4.5 feet higher than the original ridge line. So we're trying to bring the height of the roof down, and we reviewed this in accordance with the zoning code. The Board of Adjustment did approve the extra height on the gable. So we're here today to maybe try to bring the building more in compliance with the historic guidelines. Next slide, please. Does the project meet the guidelines where it's visible from the street, secondary structure? We said yes. The secondary structure is located in the extreme southwest corner of the lot. It's adjacent to a public alley with vehicle access from the public right-of-way. A secondary structure should reflect the architectural character and style of the main structure. We say yes, the secondary structure is compatible with the style of the main structure in the use of windows facade material with a double set of 8 grid pattern windows in each garage door to accent the 5-panel wood doors and canopy brackets. Secondary structure should appear subordinate in height. We said no in scale to those buildings seen traditionally along the street. We do not agree that it does not. The secondary structure is subordinate in height and scale to similar structures seen along the street front, except for the gable roof dormer height, which exceeds the zoning code by 12.5 feet, but subject to Board of Adjustment review. They did approve it as 32.5 feet. There was no opposition. It was approved on consent. However, this board can still lower the height and bring it more in line with the historic guidelines. Next slide. The carporting garage should be detached. It is. Garage dwelling is detached, secondary structure located in the rear yard. And consider using portico share. There's an original portico share on the north side of the home off of Harvard Avenue, which is the access from that side, north side of the home. And it's appropriate with the Greek Revival style of the home. Attached front-facing garage are not appropriate. That does not apply here. There are no front-facing garages. A garage door should be in keeping with the style of the house. We believe it does. Next slide. And the applicant's proposing the exterior alterations to an approved COA modified to increase the height of the gable. The original roof was 2 gable ends and the ridge line was lower in height with the fifth scale shakes on the exterior facade. Accessory structure experienced some storm damage prior to the original COA approval, and during construction, in accordance with the approved COA, the contractor discovered structural damage to the load bearing and foundation walls, as explained in the companion case in the Board of Adjustment staff report. The secondary structure will be architectural compatible with the Georgian Revival style of the home in Central Gardens. Next slide. We are recommending approval. However, we have since the publication of the staff report, we have revised the plans to make the home more in line with the roof structure of the secondary structures, roof structure to be more in line with the primary structure. And what we've done, Madam Chairman, I don't have any graphics of this, but I have a revised drawing that modify that dormer,
Good job.
or the gable, I'm sorry.
I've seen it too.
And so that's what we're recommending, and to also include brackets on the second story roof to match the home. I shared it with Mr. Warren, and it was open for discussion, and Ms. Solomito as well. So that's where we are right now. We have no conditions attached to this application. However, we would recommend if you approve this as illustrated by staff or revised by staff in accordance with the Historic District Design Guidelines, and also to include the brackets to match the principal structure. Brackets and the eaves and the brackets to match the principal structure.
I've seen it.
Is it already built? It looks like from the pictures it's already built.
Yes.
So how did
Yeah.
that happen?
Well, they had an approved COA. The problem was that they modified the COA prior to coming back to us for the change. They should have come back to us for the change.
But it had to go through Board of Adjustments first, right?
At that point, it did not.
Oh, okay,
In this case, the modification had to.
okay.
Any more questions?
Prior to where we are now, the structure was legal non-conforming. and that means it was grandfathered in. Well, I don't like to use the term grandfathered in because it doesn't apply to zoning, but it was legal non-conforming.
And so they built
And-
it back that way.
So if, as long as they didn't expand the area, change the setback, change the height, it could remain. But that didn't happen.
The height got too high.
The height and the area and the floor area changed, so therefore it reset the zoning code.
Okay.
So they had to come back and get the zoning variances for the height, floor area, and setback. And another requirement in the code that talks about windows adjacent to residential.
Right.
So is the height currently now 32 and a half, or?
Yes,
And that got approved by Board of Adjustment
Yes.
today.
yes.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. Backus? Okay,
The height of the main roof was also raised, but we're not suggesting that that would be modified. That would,
Right.
because it's not a significant,
Just a dormer?
correct.
Well, the gable,
Yeah, the gate.
yeah.
okay,
Because it's so massive. he won't-
yeah.
How big a deal is it to make it smaller?
I'm sorry.
How big a deal is it to make it, I guess that's an architect question.
Well, that would be, the architect has seen it, I'm not sure, I mean, they would lose, some lumber, but I think some lumber could be reused. They would add additional, they would need more shingles. It lowers the roof height, I don't, you know, the main thing is they keep the window
Which
in
is
our
six.
revision, yes.
Okay,
Madam Chairman, we're able to show the drawings to the property owners, our clients. I think their consensus is they would be okay with the brackets, but are not in agreement with the modification of the gable. Like I said, it was constructed, and the question of how did that happen? There was an approval of a COA. During the course of construction, there was, I believe, a judgment call by the contractor that, and stop me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, may I be
Yes, yeah,
sworn
sure.
in and
yes, sir.
thank you.
Would you, please give us your name and address, sir?
Peter Warren, 132 North White Station.
Okay, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay,
Yeah, and I just wanted to give a little background here. So,
Okay.
John Griffin was the design architect, and Eric hired him, he did the floor plans. And Eric is a commercial client and friend of mine, so I've done work for Eric. So when my name's on this project, it's in the capacity of kind of coming in after this happened, okay? So John Griffin, I guess, had some health issues or hasn't been as active. And so when this was brought to my attention as a commissioner and a friend of Eric's, I essentially drew what was built, right? And that's not how it's supposed to work, right? I'll be the first to tell you that. So decisions were made by the contractor and the owner, pardon me, and the gable, the main roof was raised about 18 inches, and the gable facing you in this drawing, which was proposed in the original, was raised by another 35 inches, or call it 3 feet. And with respect to the drawing that Brian is circulating, you know, I always appreciate the conversation, but I don't want to represent that I had anything to do with that, or, you know, I saw it for the first time. And if it comes to that, we'd like to talk about that, I can talk about that. My first impression is it's basically the full removal of that gable. You'd be putting walls returning to the roof where the roof currently flares out. And I'll say one other thing real quick. The rationale given by the contractor, and as expressed in the BOA case, was to take, if I had a laser pointer, to take the loads of this gable out further without changing the pitch, right? So whether or not there was other ways to do it, I don't know. But this was the contractor's rationale, that the slope of the roof facing you matches the slope of the principal structure going across the screen, and to take the loads out. So what you don't see in that drawing is a knee wall. So somewhere between the two, in the solid wall section, actually, let's go all the way to the ground level, okay? Where there's a bracket, correct, right there. If you go all the way straight up, there's a knee wall behind the gable at the top on the 3rd floor. And on the other side, I guess it comes down on the header of that other garage door, but the contractor, I know we did some seismic reinforcing on either side of the garage door. So the contractor's rationale was that it helps the loads come down to the ground in a straight line.
Another one I have.
And that's without changing without flattening or steepening the pitch of the upper roof there. Last thing I'll add real quick, the yellow in the photos is, of course, primer. It's how that product is sold. This back house is not yellow.
Was there another drawing that was approved that
It's in the packet,
is in here?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I also want to,
It's a hand-drawn elevation by John Gray.
add that the property owners, the Clausens, have been continually renovating and improving
see it?
the entire property, the houses, and during the course
original
of this project, they ran into masonry, old brick walls that are not structurally supportive, and so that a lot of structural steel had to be brought in. So to keep the character of the back house updated to be compatible with the main house, make sure that it's still structurally sound. It was built in approximately 1920. So those support walls, those foundation walls and support walls that are masonry brick are crumbling. And so that's why the revisions for the knee wall and the structural steel.
There's a
that's
huge
put.
difference between this
Right,
drawing that was
'cause-
approved.
Because the pitch is low and it has a different type of window.
It does have a
Yeah,
different
for
kind of
sure.
window.
And the pitch is much different.
Let's see, it's back.
I'm struggling to understand this.
Right.
Looks like a
Not to,
different kind
I
of
don't want to
window.
change the subject off
I
of
mean, it
that.
changes the
We
whole
all
character.
agreed that gable is the principal
look.
point of discussion, but I want to,
I mean, this is totally different.
want to
than
point
that.
out
That's
one
what was approved.
change that is being made. There was a photograph showing the south elevation from the alley where the gable was broken by,
That's,
Wait,
yeah.
back.
there you
go back.
Well, we can start with this. Or no, let's start with a photo. Okay, the gable's broken there, and that's not correct. I mean, we're gonna, I've told Eric that the gable needs to be reconciled, and that fascia board under that cursor needs to extend up to the ridge. The lower slope roof you see is a shed roof over a shower, and it was in the original designs, but this is, if you go to the most recent kind of CAD drawing elevation, we're showing the reconciliation or repair of that to look more conventional. Now, all this being said, this back house, I made a note at the bottom,
that
is 6 feet from the alley. You know, the only person who has this view is the neighbor's backyard, but it didn't quite look right from Willette. You could see it at an angle, a steep angle from the road, but, and one other comment I'll make, clearly I'm standing here with a position on this case that, I've just finished rereading the secondary structure Central Gardens bylaws about, the rules for the secondary structures, accessory, they call them secondary structures, I think. And it says it should be subordinate to the principal structure. And, there's definitely a judgment call there. This is still 6 to 8 feet shorter than the principal house. The main house is massive. This has always been a very large carriage house, 4 bays, 3 stories. So, I'm personally in favor of allowing this approval of this proposed design, right? It's not how we're supposed to be here at this situation. I tried to make that case last month. Didn't go over so well with the applicant. And I think I've made clear my capacity here with Eric to come and illustrate this and present this. But with that, I'll yield.
Can you go to the color photo of the street view of the structure in the backyard? One more, where you can see the house too. So there it is over there on the far right. Yeah, there. Yeah, I just wanted to see how the scale.
Yeah, so if you continue, you're obviously facing west here. If you continue to the left, which is south, and you
Right here.
facing south?
This is off of Harvard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
this is
Harbor.
side, okay, not the front. I'm sorry, you're right, Brian. There's the structure on the right side, correct, okay.
So it's still gonna protrude out like that, right? Even if we lower it? on
Well, I
the,
mean, that was approved, the presence of a gable on that facade was in the original design.
right, I'm
The
just
ridge-
saying,
The ridge would have sprung from the other ridge line.
And how much larger is what was approved? I mean, is this,
So it's a little complicated. The ridge running this way went up 18 inches.
okay,
The ridge running this way went up 35 inches.
so
So
3
the
feet.
18 inches to me, and I think everyone is negligible. The other, but now there's roughly a 35 inch or 3 foot, call it 3 foot offset. And that's objectionable to some. Like I said, I don't find it in any explicit violation of the guideline. And I always kind of try to come back to those guidelines,
but it's not exactly the point.
Well, I mean, it's not
The
supposed to be
point
taller
is
than the
they went
ridge.
ahead forward and did something that
correct, which happens, like,
guidelines are not.
right.
But it was done by the contractor.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
didn't, right, I did not
Approved.
draw, I
So-
did not draw this or
I
change
know.
it, and
But approved by
But,
the
I mean,
owners.
3 feet's, I mean, you can see, it almost has a steeple effect. I mean, it draws your eye, in other words. It's a struggle. All right,
By the
sorry.
So
owners.
I think that, and the rationale again was because there was a plan for a certain pitch. And the contractor made the judgment call that rather than to do this or to go it out and flatten it out more, keep the same pitch, but in order to
Make it up high.
extend the roof line to match the steel supports that were put in. So not sure how any other revisions will affect the structural plan, the structural steel that's been put into place. And I think, yes, it was done, but it was, like I said, sort of a on-site
It's called field,
problem.
it's called field changes.
Right.
Madam Chair, if I may, just going back to what Mr. Warren talked about, the knee wall that is actually carrying the support would still be in the same location with the drawing that Mr. Bacchus presented. So the structural portion remains the same. Just wanted to point that out, so.
Okay.
And again, once more, this is another case of doing it and asking him for forgiveness. We have this every single month.
It's been an epidemic, really, since Midtown has started to revitalize. And, I get that the contractor made a decision, but at the same time, he should be aware of the rules. Is there opposite, I guess?
She's gonna ask.
Yeah, just give, you guys, you can be seated. Is there any,
yeah, I mean, I, as a commissioner, it's, I don't, it is a problem. These are problems, and I don't know if it's education, I don't know if it's verbiage on the certificate that needs to be more explicit. I don't know. I do know this contractor is new to Memphis. This might be one of his first projects in the area. He's based in Nashville.
Can
every
I
time
say,
we
I
make
think,
an
I mean,
excuse.
there's always an
Every time we
excuse.
make an
yeah,
excuse.
it's-
The
excuse-
last
Madam
contractor
Chair?
was from
Hold on,
Germantown.
May I?
just
You
a
know,
second,
that
just a second.
foreign
Everybody
city,
can talk at the same
Germantown.
time. Wait a minute.
Madam Chair, I was just going to say, I think that the last meeting that we had, we all came to the conclusion that, yes, this is a problem, but in the end, what we have to do today is look at and we're going to address that issue as well as we can. But today, I think the prudent thing would be to look at this case on its merits, the changes that were from the original COA to today, and discuss that and vote on that. And then we can try to conquer the other issues as we can.
Well, one of the last things I'd like to say, standing over on this side, is on its merits, I think it is entirely relevant that this is a back house and a secondary structure and not a principal structure.
But it's pretty prominent as a secondary structure. I mean, it's very prominent.
It's a large secondary structure.
Yeah, it's a house for some people.
Right, but I don't, when you look at a drawing, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that this is the back house behind the main house. And, this body has a history of looking at a case fresh when it comes back before it. In the case, a large case in point was last month, where a principal house with principal structure with fronting on 2 streets, added a second floor and a porch structure that wasn't in the drawings. And that's why I don't know that we can always draw a draconian line for this applicant or one in Speedway Terrace or one in any other district that messes up. I mean,
What, okay, thank you. All right. Is there anyone here in support or opposition of this case? You may approach, please. Hi, would you give us your name and address?
Yes, I'm Debbie Hafner, and I live at 705 South McLean Boulevard.
Okay, would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you.
I'm
Yep.
here representing Central Gardens Association.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think the main thing that the neighbors and the people with the committee, think that it is still too high because people have been calling us saying that they can see it from everywhere. And so we looked at the plans, but we looked at the old original plans, and they weren't that high. So it wasn't anything that really alerted us to making our decisions at an earlier time to speak with them about that. But they are against the Central Gardens guidelines, landmark guidelines. And it's end 14. Dormers are a frequent neighborhood architectural roof feature and should be considered for new construction. And then under that is A, B, C, and D. A is the design of a dormer should be compatible with the main structure. B is a dormer should be subordinate to the overall roof mass and should be in scale with the ones on similar historic structures. C, the ridge of a dormer should be located below the ridge line of the primary structure. D, the number and size of dormers should not visually overwhelm the scale of the primary structure. The C, the ridge of the dormer should be located below the ridge line, is a major thing for the design and architectural guidelines for the homes in Central Gardens. So that is one that really sticks up highly on the reason why we don't think that this should be approved.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you. All right, applicants, you have 3 minutes to rebuttal.
Thank you, ma'am. In working in this industry, especially in older neighborhoods, and even some of the newer neighborhoods that are having design guidelines and having some pretty strict regulations, it's a learning curve for everybody. It's a learning curve for people in the industry, for neighbors, and trying to get along. I think what's important is, A, we meet the guidelines of the Office of Planning and Development and the Memphis Landmarks Commission, the regulations here. And then I think we'd have to look at this, like Peter Warren said, it's a judgment call. This is not a principal structure. This does not face a public street. You do have the right to review it, however, doesn't have the same impact as if it were facing a public street, facing another house. Because you can see it from, at one street over, doesn't have the same weight as if it were a new construction facing someone else's house. So if you're driving down the street, you can see it. You can see everybody's houses driving down the street. But is that a negative from the ability to try and improve a situation? Does it detract from the improvements and the value that this is providing? And again, it doesn't face a public street, and it didn't even really face the alley. What we're discussing faces the back of the Clausen's home.
And I don't really have anything new to add other than the request to look to let's find other views of this house. This is the side of the house from Harvard. Can we look at the views from Willette? So the back, that's the, go back one. There's a, okay, that, back,
Not really new views.
no, just maybe the previous slide. The front of the house, like on the axis, right? Okay, so there's the front door, right? Clearly you can't see the back house, right? And I'm not disputing that you can see it from other angles. But we've spent all this time looking obliquely across the side yard. Now you have another slide where you start to go south, and you have a view, no, there's another slide, it's this one with the magnolia tree, right, yeah. With the sign in the yard.
Right there, top, at the top.
Yeah, the top. And as as you go further south and you look across the neighbor's property, you start to see the south elevation. But I just, you know,
So all these people, I'm sorry to interrupt you, all these people who wrote letters of approval, they are happy,
But some of them don't live in the neighborhood.
one of
they
them-
don't live in the
one of them.
neighborhood.
Here, two of them, or
And
three
what
of
about the
them.
neighbors?
Hold on.
He has 3 minutes. We used up his time.
Okay. No, I think Brenda's point is, and my point is that, and to Brett's point, that every case needs to be considered on its own merits, and that this, you know, this is a secondary structure that is 3 feet higher than the drawings, you know, and I think,
That's it. Thank you.
One other.
No, no, no. It's over.
This is done.
That's
3
it.
minutes is over. So, does she get to rebuttal?
Yeah, she gets a rebuttal then.
No, that's
Okay.
it.
Okay. No, I'm in.
I got you.
Okay.
This is it. Now, we have to talk about it. But let me say this. So, I just have when you're doing construction, you have an architect and you do your drawings. Who is approving this contractors? Because you have to be out there. You sign off on it, right? Anybody can answer, that's an architect, right? When you're doing construction,
Yeah, who's supervising the contractor?
right?
I believe this would be a question for the applicant. I think Mr. Warren has stated that he wasn't involved at this point, so,
That John was sick. John Griffin was sick.
well,
So did
John
the
Griffin is
own-
actually
was
not
it
the
owners that,
contractor.
signed off, or who?
Can't be, they're not architects.
Yeah, but they can approve
Yeah, I'm talking to this group.
changes.
I guess I don't know who to ask. I mean, like, is this house or secondary dwelling, is it affecting directly a neighbor? Does a neighbor, is the people that affects, do they care?
The neighbor,
One says it's Charlie Kenny, and I know who that is fine. He's
yes, he
fine
wrote
with
a letter
it.
of support, and he is right next door to this back house.
Okay, and he's okay with it?
Yes, he wrote a letter of support, and he is supportive.
And there's no neighbor that is near the house that's opposed,
Can,
We do not
Good.
have
other than the Central Gardens?
and Debbie,
an individual.
Can we have Debbie come up and speak?
Problem is, a lot of the neighbors griped, a lot of the neighbors were aware of it, and we kept saying, no, we've seen the guides, we've seen the guidelines, what they're gonna do, and they are under, they're okay. They were under that. They didn't show the new dormer. And so we were quoting the old dormer height because we thought they were in compliance.
So you were surprised
And
too?
there wasn't anything we could do about it if they were in compliance. But now that we found out that it's so much higher, that's why probably you don't have as many people that have wrote in saying they weren't wanting this because they thought they were in compliance and there wasn't anything they could do about it.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I ask Ms. Habner a question?
Well, certainly.
Well, so the original COA, you were going on the original COA that was approved, right? And you were relaying to your residents that
Yes, that called me.
that called you, the COA, you were referring to the original COA that was approved?
Yes.
Right, okay. So the COA that was approved in your packet,
Is this one?
yeah, that's what she was responding to her neighbors for. But I guess at some point, someone went out and looked at it and compared the two and realized it wasn't in compliance.
Well, it's not even close.
may I add one
Well,
comment?
just the roof structure is not, just
Right,
that dormer.
in the window.
May I add one comment? But when this came back before landmarks, new notifications were sent, as if it were a new case, correct?
No, this never came to landmarks. It was just-
Madam Chair, I'm not sure where we are with the procedures, but I know we probably have used different amounts of time for
It's our discussion right
applicant.
now.
I think that
Well, it
it
was
may
our
be at this
discussion
point
before
to,
they got-
you could, I mean, you can ask questions if you would like, but I think when we get to the point where you want to deliberate, we would get a second
This
and
has
a
only been in
motion.
front of landmarks this time.
I'm just trying to
This other time
understand
and
it.
this time.
Well, the COA was, the original COA, both, one was a minor.
okay.
We approved it as a minor.
Okay.
Legal non-conforming structure.
And this is the
Not a-
second time.
yeah,
This
this
is
is
the
the-
second one that's actually been in front of us.
That's a major.
That's a major.
But,
No.
yeah,
Has it ever been a major?
Well, not to my knowledge.
Well, this is the first time it's a major. It was approved as a minor, and it went before Board of Adjustments. before
Yes.
this.
And they've approved.
And-
Yesterday.
And it was approved.
Right, but it had to go to Board of
Yes.
Adjustment because of the modifications. And so that's what triggered the Board of Adjustment, because the modifications were made. And so
So,
it had to get the variances before
You
it
sit
came
down.
back here.
So have, no, hold on a second.
Madam Chairman, I just want to go through this chronological order thing because I think it's important. The original COA was approved maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
2017.
As a minor.
And then the applicant realized time was running out. They renewed their COA. We renewed it as a minor, like it was originally approved. That's all we did. And during construction, I guess when they got to the third level, they realized there were some structural issues. So now that's why we back before you to kind of modify and satisfy those structural issues as it relates to the roof structure. So that's where we are now. And what we're approving today is whether or not the BOA height that was approved yesterday, the setback variance, the second floor stairwell window adjacent to the neighbor, is all that in compliance with the historic district design guidelines. That's where we are. And so we've recommended approval, but we're also recommending that this dormer be, this gable become a dormer, a roof, a hip roof dormer to match the south side terrace. I call it terrace, but it's actually a deck. So the covered deck on the south side. That's all we're asking today is to, and what will happen I've been inside, I walked it. I've been inside, third story. What will happen if we recommend it like we revised this drawing? The only thing that'll happen is the roof will come down and you'll have an inset for a window. That's the only thing. The bearing walls will remain the same.
Okay.
You'll have an inset. You see the houses where you have the window in this little inset and the roof comes down and you can't really walk in that area, but you got light, you got a window to get out of. That's really the important thing here. I think it's a bedroom space. So they gotta have a window to get out in the event of a fire. So that's the real issue, but they don't lose the window. They keep the window, they add more shingles, they lose the hardy board, and they keep the window, and they have, they can make the hip roof, to match the standing seam metal roof on that side. So you'll just have to change some joists, some silly joists. That's really what it amounts to.
So, Mr. Vaca's question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
What is a simple solution here? Can we add an amendment to, lower the ridge line to make it in compliance? Is that the simplest solution?
Because
It
right
would
now,
be-
it's line, because they're,
It
right
would
now it
be
just
to
says
lower the
approval.
ridge line to the new ridge line.
In compliance with Central Garden guidelines.
Right. Well, I
To be in
believe
compliance.
Mr. Bacchus's drawing that he designed, I think, there are other options. I think that's a solution that works well. It doesn't change a massive amount. I mean, it's a change, but this was done, it's completely not in compliance with the COA. I think that you could condition it, if you were so inclined, to say that you would lower the ridge line to be in compliance with the design guidelines, and that staff would work with the applicant on a design solution, and we have one that's an option. So
is
that's
that
one
the language we
option.
need?
It's a possibility if that's,
So do we need to make that motion?
Well, what you just said, Brian, is not in here.
No.
So, right,
There's no
what he just
conditions in
said.
there.
You could
Well,
say
no,
as
the
illustrated by
changes,
staff.
yeah. the changes the drawing you made, that's not in here.
No, it's not.
Right.
We'll have to say that in our.
Right.
So are we ready to make a motion? Or are we still discussion?
We can
Madam
make a
Chair.
motion for a friendly amendment.
Well, it wouldn't be a friendly amendment because I believe the applicant has not agreed to it. It would be an amendment that staff recommended, that you would be able to consider.
An amendment for your consideration.
Yes.
Well, we had to vote, then we can discuss, right?
We need to have a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion. I make a motion to approve MLC number 19-245, subject to lowering the ridge line to meet Central Garden guidelines and the applicant working with staff to make that happen in the most economically efficient way for them, or ever design way they want to do it.
Second?
Okay. You ready?
We'll clean it up.
Would you, Mrs. Secretary, would you give us a roll call, please?
Do you have any discussion here?
We
You know,
do.
I struggle because, if you want to discuss, I struggle because it's built, but at the same time, it doesn't change the fact that it doesn't meet guidelines. If we can make the argument that every contractor gets to have an oops and fix it the way it works for them, and then we just wouldn't need this body, because you're just subject to every contractor trying to fix a mistake.
But
At
lowering
at
the
some
ridge
point,
line
you have
solves
to
the
just
problem,
say,
does it not?
Yeah.
this is the guideline, and I'm sorry it happened, but.
But lowering the ridge line solves the problem.
Yeah, it is definitely protruding. It looks like the front of a church out there.
I'm ready to
Is that
vote.
it?
I think we solved the problem.
I'm ready
Yeah.
to vote.
But how you get there, I'm not saying you have to do his drawing. I'm just
Correct.
saying, lower it, and there's architects and everybody else has a better idea than I, and they can figure out that math on it too.
Okay, let's vote, please.
Ready for a vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ms. Doss?
Yes.
Ms. England?
Yes.
Ms. Boyd?
Yes.
Vice Chair Tucker?
Yes.
Chair Cox?
Yes,
Motion passes with amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. All right. Any new business?
I don't think so.
New business? Any new business? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.